Welcome back, my friends. It is time for the Morning Mindset. I hope you are ready to get your minds aligned with the truth of God. Let's just take a deep breath. Let's clear everything away and prepare to focus on what the scriptures say for us today. Today, I want to take a small selection from the end of Psalm chapter 20 for us to consider. This is what it says in verses 7 through 8. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. They collapse and fall, but we rise and stand upright. Now let's think about that for a moment, because we don't deal with chariots and horses in our day and age. You see, chariots and horses were the symbols of the military might or strength of a nation back in the day that David wrote this. You think about it, the men would go out to battle and they would be in chariots, they would be riding on horses. And the more mounted or riding soldiers there were in an army, the more intimidating it would seem to the opponents. And so David is pointing out that many people trust in appearances of power like that, in appearances of might and authority. And that tendency has never gone away. It is still the same in our day. I mean, let's take some examples from our day and age. We have military stockpiles that nations rely on. Very similar context to what David is talking about. But let's try to make it a little more practical. It may not be an aggressive or offensive kind of thing that we're looking at. It may be a defensive kind of thing, a security of sorts. Do you know where I'm going here? A bank account or investments or a salary. Those may be the things that we are more likely to depend on. But yet there are other things that we depend on. We could be leaning entirely on our infrastructure, our electrical grid, our utility system, just assuming it's always going to be there, it's always going to be working, and that we can rely on that and depend on that and build on that toward the future. And that is a place that we put our trust. Now, I recognize that some of those examples may seem a little far-fetched, and it may seem, well, what are you getting at? Well, my point in talking about those things is to put us in mind of the things that we tend to rely on in our culture so that we can better take stock of the comparison that David is making here. Let me read the verse again. He says, some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. You see, what he's saying is not that you should not have those things. So go back to our illustrations, the bank accounts, the salary, the electrical grid, all of those things I mentioned, plus many more. He's not saying we should not have those things. He's saying we should not trust in them more than we trust in the Lord. Now, it is very interesting that David says we trust in the name of the Lord our God. You see, back in their day, there were names of various gods. There was Molech, there was Ashtoreth, there was Baal, or Baal, some people would say it. Those were names of gods, little g, and every nation had its god or gods. And so David is making a distinction here about Israel. Israel was different because Israel had one God. And here when he says we trust in the name of the Lord our God, the word Lord, if you notice in the text, is all caps, which is an indication it was the name of God. So he's saying we trust in the name of Yahweh our God. And you see, the reason that's important is because we serve the true and living God, a real Savior. And we should be different in our culture. We should not be relying, not in our full trust, on the same things those in our culture rely on. We trust in the name of the Lord our God. So what about you, my friend? What are you going to trust in today? Does He have your back? Absolutely. He does. If you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the Morning Mindset support team, go to the show notes or description in your podcast player or app